I have noticed that many people have an interesting habit, and it relates to openness to talk about one certain thing. People of various ages, nationalities, and education levels are exposed to this, and I have really seen it in many countries all over the world. Now, it's not talking about sex, drugs, or drinking habits. We're not really in 550s anymore, right? Discussing all this has become a norm, and this is actually a very good thing. The taboo topic I'm going to talk to you today and publicly about is our relationship with paying taxes. Indeed, long before I was born and started my academic journal, a wise man have compared paying taxes with the death, saying that both are inevitable. Well, we do know, however, that the tax part claim of this is not entirely correct, right? I myself have seen lots of bribery, corruption, and all types of tax evasion in my previous life before entering academia, when I was working in the private sector. And indeed, my colleagues actually call this as a business as usual, but it has a different name. And the name is the shadow economy. Indeed, numerous sources, and all the sources actually that I know of, clearly indicate that shadow economy exists in all countries, basically, right? But do we really have to care about this, right? Is it really that important? Well, I would say yes, and for one simple reason. And the reason is that shadow economy tends to create more shadow economy. I mean, just imagine for a second that for any reason you decide to involve in some sort of tax evasion activities one day. You know, just imagine, right? Then what happens with very, very, very big likelihood is that your neighbors will see that, and they also will involve the shadow economy. Other neighbors will do that, the same thing, and soon the whole neighborhood will be evading taxes. At some point one day, government will see this, and they see this in a way that they lack money in the state budget. So what do government do when they see they don't have money? They raise taxes. So when they raise taxes, people that previously paid all the taxes, they actually can understand, well, you know, we cannot afford to do this anymore. So they also involve in the shadow economy. At some point, actually, this becomes a norm in the society. And we see actually more and more companies being established without having no intentions whatsoever to pay any taxes at all. So all this has triggered my interest to the extent that back in 2003, I entered PhD studies and remained in academia since then. And what I soon realized is that, well, also other scholars have tried to measure the size of the shadow economy, yet as stated by one of the key authorities in a field, Professor Schneider, there is no perfect method that can actually accurately, 100% accurately, do this. So as a response, what did we do? We created yet another imperfect method to measure the size of the shadow economy, together with a colleague of mine, Professor Talis Putnic. We published a paper in 2015 in academic journal, but actually the method itself was invented back in 2009 or 2010 and applied to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Some of you might have heard about the shadow economy index for the Baltic countries. And of course, while developing the method, and any researcher and scholar would know this, that you do face a number of challenges. Actually, quite a lot of challenges. And this was, of course, not an exception. So we also faced some of them. The first one, well, it turned out that we actually don't really understand often what we mean. What is this shadow economy, right? What are we talking about? We use different words: informal economy, black economy, unregistered work, and so on and so forth, and we often use this as synonyms, but they are actually not. So in our work, following suggestions by leading scholars in the area, we came to distinguish between three key elements of what we called as an observed economy. So the first one is black economy. So here we talk about completely illegal goods and services, right? Then it turns out we have unregistered businesses that are not even registered, and they can deliver either legal or illegal goods and services. But when we talk about the shadow economy, when I talk about the shadow economy today, we are referring to the legal businesses that are registered in official registers that deliver legal goods and legal services, yet part of it they are also, you know, doing some sort of tax evasion. So far, so good. So we defined the shadow economy, but that turned out not to be the key challenge. The key challenge was actually where we get data in order to measure the shadow economy, and we had some ideas, of course, in the mind. The first idea was, let's just use official statistics. Now, statistics is statistics. We probably can do this. Some other scholars have done it before, but we also know the joke maybe it's not a joke about lies, big lies, and statistics, right? So we thought, okay, maybe it's not a good idea to do this. Then the second thought was, okay, well, let's go and talk to the government officials. Well, government officials or other scholars, they are clever people. They have analysts working for them, lots of money, sometimes invested, well, some say wasted, depends on the perspective, right? And they can tell us what to do about this. Yet, why don't we actually go and talk to the direct source, the entrepreneurs and company managers themselves that are involved, on some part at least, in the shadow economy, or at least they see it, right? So this is actually what we did, and it turns out that we were the first ones in the world that actually used this type of approach when it comes to measurement of the shadow economy. Well, okay, but will they tell us the truth, right? So if I would ask any of you here, how much you pay or receive in the envelope, what would you tell me? 0, none, come on, right? No. In the same way, if I would ask you, how much wine do you consume per month? Well, you would say, well, sometimes it's like a medicine to me, a glass maybe every second day. But my friends and neighbors, whoa, they are heavy drinkers. I know, well, come on. Turns out that this is the way people respond when they are asked about the sensitive questions. And it's same about the shadow economy. People tend to be, on average, more frank when they talk about others, not about themselves. And on average, again, this is more truthful response. Well, of course, I still had to test this, even though we knew it from other studies, and I actually did it. And it was back in 2005 when I collected data for my doctoral dissertation. So, interviewed number of company managers in 2005, asking them how much companies in your industry evade taxes, and I gave them a list of different type of tax evasion, and they gave me responses. So I approached them as experts, and they told me what they know about those others. So then, 1 year later, in 2016, we did a follow-up study, and I reminded them, remember last year you said me that in your company, not in your industry, you are evading, you're paying envelope wages for 22%, for instance, or something like that, for any reasons. And is the situation really the same now, or has this changed? And believe it or not, only 2 or 3 remembered we talked about others. All the others were saying, well, well, last year we paid 22%, now situation has actually not that good, so we are paying a bit more or a bit less. So I understood that, again, even not perfectly, we can use this method to get, not perfect, but still better data than asking directly. Then the second thing, believe it or not, we are actually talking about these issues with entrepreneurs, company managers by phone. And again, back in 2005, I was convinced that there is no way that I could call someone and then they will tell me the truth about the shadow economy. So again, I tested this back in 2005, conducting my PhD study. And the way I did it, since I was convinced that nobody will tell me about this thing, I was equipped with a letter from the rector of my school stating I'm not from the state revenue service or financial police, so you can talk to me about these things. And I was crazy enough to talk face-to-face with 133 company managers. Some interviews lasted for 4 hours. 4 hours with CEO. I got a number of job offers after that, instantly enough. So competition for my school, even at that point. But what I actually realized, what I noticed, that nobody really cared about those letters, right? Some of them asked for my business card, which I did not have, right? And even though in societies, and that was a conclusion, even though in societies where people in general do not want to talk about tax evasion, company managers do this. And believe me, in some cases they did it very openly. So they were actually, they wanted to show how good they are in this behavior. Well, of course, we do some other things in order to get more truthful data. I will not go into the detail, but then we also calculate this. We have this data. Once we have it, then we calculate the shadow economy index itself. And this is how it looks for those of you who love econometrics. Of course, I only have 15 minutes. I will not go much in detail. In the essence, we calculate the index looking on the envelopes, wages, hidden business income, hiding of number of employees, and we use one of the methods that is applied to calculate the GDP. So that is That is about the calculation of the shadow economy, and these are actually results of the index. So you can see in some countries the shadow economy is pretty big, and this is percentage of the GDP we are talking about. That's a lot of money regardless of the currency you are using, Russian rubles, euros, or US dollars, right? As I said, initially we are actually applying the shadow economy index for the Baltic countries since 2009, and here you can see dynamics, how it changes year to year. But I think even more importantly to me, this shows something else, and this shows my relationship with the policymakers. Believe it or not, when you do this type of study, not always policymakers appreciate what you are doing, especially when the shadow economy goes up. Then it actually shows that they did not do something right, and of course the response quite often is that, well, you know, they blame you, they blame methodology, they blame everything. Situation changes when the shadow economy goes down according to your estimates. Then you can be even invited to some more receptions, right, or qualify for some prize at some point. So I mean, indeed, I did not really start this study in order to get so many friends with the policymakers. Yet I also have to admit that over the years, the attitude of the policymakers has changed, and if we compare 5 years ago and today, they are much more open to talk about the shadow economy than before. So then we also explore influential factors behind the shadow economy, and here you see most important ones that are mentioned. In fact, many entrepreneurs also talk about the trust towards the government, in particular with regards to how taxpayers' money is spent, and of course sometimes not really without the reason. So trust is of course essential thing. Well, if we see that shadow economy exists in so many countries, is it always bad? The answer actually is no, because of the way we define the shadow economy. Remember, we're talking about entrepreneurs that are registered and they do many good things, yet also partly involved in the shadow economy. And by the way, there are studies like the one that has been conducted by Professor Colin Williams, who explored 26 developing countries, and they found that those companies that operate in the business without being registered for a longer time, they actually later on are much more productive than companies in general, on average, in that country. So I think that sends a signal to the policymakers with regards to the tax regimes and also how to foster entrepreneurship with taxes and other policy initiatives. Indeed, I have really worked quite a lot with the policymakers during this 10 years journey, and I think I have learned a lot during this journey. If I could mention just maybe one thing, the biggest learning experience that I've got is that actually targeting 0% shadow economy is not possible and actually not even good. Just as we do not need zero bureaucracy or zero unemployment. That is even in very developed countries with very low shadow economies, people tend to involve in shadow economy activities for a simple reason. It makes our lives easier if we do just a bit. And I mean, truly, can all of you say, I have never been involved in any of those activities that in fact can be classified as shadow economy activities? Well, strictly between us, don't tell to the State Revenue Service. I have, and I will, right? And I don't think it's something very bad. Yet, remember one thing, and we should return where we started. Shadow economy is bad thing, damaging thing in a long term. And what starts as something small can actually grow with time. And thus we shouldn't be surprised that the policymakers will sometimes use the stick in order not to make this happen. And this is okay, as long as the stick does not come first, and also we see the carrot. Because the last thing that we want and the government want is that by fighting shadow economy, we also fight entrepreneurship, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, one way to solve a problem, if it exists, is to talk about that problem, right? So shadow economy is a major problem in many societies. And yes, I know it's not that sexy topic still for most of all of us, but why don't we talk about shadow economy more often? Maybe? Thank you.